Hello everyone, I'm Jyotsna and welcome to my YouTube channel. As the year draws to a close, I find myself reflecting on my incredible journey as a sustainable artist. And it is with immense gratitude that I want to thank each and every one of you who has chosen to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Knowing that they're individuals who find inspiration and value in what I do is a source of inspiration beyond words. It is your encouragement that fuels my passion and my creativity to come up with quality content and creative content to share with you all. Today, I want to take this opportunity to share my story of becoming an artist. It's a long story and I hope you will bear with me. I think I have never really shared my story on a public platform. So I thought of sharing it with my YouTube community. So I did my PhD in biochemistry and molecular biology and cellular biology is a three combination. And my master's was in clinical biochemistry and nutrition. I love biochemistry, it's my favorite subject. Then I did that in Australia. I lived in Australia for almost a decade before I landed in Austria. So my PhD lab as well as my first postdoc, which was in Melbourne, which I totally loved. These were the labs where, every member of the lab was like a family to me. We had a very supportive, very flexible environment, and it is something I used to wake up to go to. I was so passionate about it. It is the environment that made the whole difference. It was something I never wanted to skip, even though my PhD supervisor sometimes used to tell me that, Jyotsna, just get out of the lab. I don't want to see you. Take a break, go for a movie or something. It's something I never really wanted to do because I loved being in the lab. I loved doing my research. And it was the environment that actually always pulled me to be there. Until I decided to change my field of research to diversify my profile a bit. Everything changed. It was a turning point in my life. I wish I had someone to counsel me, but it was ultimately going to be my own decision. I had a fantastic opportunity that came by for me to join a great lab in University of California, San Francisco. It was a fantastic lab where I got an opportunity to join. It was continuation of my research in Melbourne on hypertension, and I would have continued to work on that similar field itself. But I wasn't really sure because that meant starting my life from scratch in the United States, whereas I was comfortable being in Australia. I had a fantastic quality of life, work-life balance, and I didn't want to give up on it. I wasn't sure how the new lab was going to be because it was not known to my mentors and it was totally new. So it was a big chance I took, a risk, so to speak, that I decided to go back to Australia. And during that time, while I was still deciding, I also went trekking in the higher Himalayan region, spent quality time with my parents, also went exploring the hills of southern India. It was really nice. I really felt, invigorated after having taken a break of about 6 months before going back to Australia and continuing my research. I wasn't really happy in that place. It didn't give me any flexibility. It was always very stressful, and this is something I had never experienced before. I was so used to being in a flexible environment, and when you kind of get restrained, it really can affect your psyche to a great extent. And I just wanted to break free from this environment. I always looked forward to weekends rather than work days. it totally changed everything, how I used to live my life before. I was all by myself. I made a couple of really good friends who were very supportive, and I still keep in contact with my friends. But the lab, it was really not a nice place to be. And I can understand why it was like that, because there was pressure from the higher aboves. But it just kind of filters down to all the other people as well. And this is not a really healthy place if you want to get some quality work done. But anyway, I ended up being in a crash with a car. I love sports, and that's how I kept myself sane. So being a cyclist, you're always at a risk, when you're on the roads, not to be caught in an accident. But it was my destiny to meet with an accident, and that sort of started to change the way I was. I started to think of quitting science and doing something else. I could not have left the city because I had to undergo a lot of rehab. I also had court case going on because of the negligence of the driver. It was like it dragged on for 1.5 years. I could not use my right hand because it was broken. Apart from the other things that broke, I went into multiple surgeries. So even though I wanted to just run away from this place, I could not, because I had to get my treatments done. I had to get through the court case, etc. So this is the time when I started to think of other things. Then that's how I also met my husband, who is a very, very loving person. I'm very glad to have met him during this dark phase, which was like a blessing in disguise. At that time, I couldn't see it like that. But anyway, things happen for a reason. And that's also when I started to think about, as I mentioned, doing something else. And when I would just sit, I would start to scribble with my left hand, try to draw something. And so this was like a gradual process. Eventually, I landed in, I took a break actually. I went back home to India, and so I was running, and I came across this shop window where it said you can learn Indian folk art. And I was like, wow, this is a sign. And so I enrolled myself, and that kind of fueled my creativity so much. I would always come up with new ideas, new designs, new patterns of the Indian folk art. During this phase, I didn't really think of natural pigments. I knew that this art was being done by the tribals using natural pigments, but I didn't know how to use them. I did use red earth for the base to make my paintings, but how to actually use the pigments is something I learned much later. And then I moved to Austria eventually. I didn't give a thought as to how my life is going to be here, especially with the science community being so close. If you're highly educated, coming from a different country, things are not very easy to come by. And this is from my own personal experience, and also from what I've heard from a few other people who have had a similar fate after coming to Austria. So it's a great place to live. It's a beautiful country, but learning a new language, trying to getting used to the way of the Austrian attitude, everything was quite new to me. I came from Australia. Australia is warm, the people are warm, and this was just the opposite of what I had experienced in Australia. I never felt alienated in Australia, but the moment I landed in Austria, it just didn't feel, it just felt very strange. That warmth was lacking. The warmth and the people was lacking. And if you're one of those people who can feel the connections, you would know what I'm talking about. So I've been here now for a decade as well. And I can tell you that even now, Although I have gotten immune to how people behave at times, it doesn't bother me anymore. But in the beginning, it was very shocking for me. I didn't want to be here. And 6 months I had to wait to find a position, which was again really difficult to come by. And during that 6 months, I was painting. And we also, because my husband was well connected, he's from a creative field. Well, not creative, he is. He does lots of many different projects. So he actually encouraged me to have pop-up shows. So we did some pop-up shows, and this was the winter time, so it was ideal for holding such pop-up events. And this was a phase when I also discovered the YouTube channel, where I learned so many things from people sharing their art, their skills, and I'm very thankful for that, for this community, from where I learned so many things. And crafting was one such thing that I learned. And so I had a couple of successful pop-up shows where I also sold my paintings. And then eventually found a position as a postdoc in the city that we currently live in. And although I had a stable job, a fantastic salary, I was not really happy with the way things worked in this workplace. It was not so bad as the one as my last stint in Australia, in southern part of Australia, but it was still nothing so great. I knew that for sure I will never be able to find places to work like I had in Melbourne and Brisbane. Those places were like heaven for me. So anyway, I embraced what was there. I wasn't complaining. But you cannot do quality work if you don't enjoy what you're doing. So during this phase, we got married, and then later on our son was born. And it is during that time that we decided, okay, I quit for some time. I became a mother at the age of 40, which is quite late. And I wanted to be with my son for his formative years. And I didn't realize that if I quit and if I wanted to find a position later on, it will be so difficult. And that's what happened. Till now, I have not been able to find a position for myself, and I think I can really forget about it. So whilst I was on maternity leave, my husband actually pushed me out of my comfort zone, and he said, why don't we create a children's booklet on health and nutrition? And this was my expertise as well. And that's when I started to learn to illustrate. And once again, as I mentioned, I learned it all from YouTube channels. Or when we also started being in a community of the sustainable agriculture farmers, so our mindset started to shift. And this is when I started to think about using more sustainable natural colors, because once I had illustrated and written this book, I co-authored the booklet with my husband, and it's in German. We printed 10,000 copies of this booklet, which was done using all environment-friendly inks and printing methods. So this was our first step, and even I learned so much during this process. It was a steep learning curve for us, because although we printed 10,000 copies, there were no takers for this booklet, even though every now and then we would hear on the radio about the health and nutrition, how important it is, and why it is important to eat organic, local, and seasonal food. And this is what the focus of the book was also about. It just happened to be that way. But when we approached the local organic stores and bookstores, no one was really willing to take our booklets. And it was very surprising, because they all talked about seasonal, regional, and local food, but you don't have any takers for that, so which was quite surprising. So it was a steep learning curve, that don't go into production of something till you have done your market research. And we didn't really have any reach, so this was not going to work. And we did eventually break even in 6-7 years, I think. But it was initially quite a bit of a big investment and a big risk, but we took it. And during that process, I also evolved quite a bit because I started to explore more about natural pigments. That is in 2016. And I found that there were not many, actually there was nobody selling natural paints here in Europe. And I had to source it from America, and it was expensive, especially when you don't have an income. Getting things from overseas was quite expensive, and I had to be really mindful of what I could purchase and what I shouldn't. Things in the city were also very, it was not very easy to source things, art supplies basically, in my city, because it's a small city, and things that were available in United States and other parts of the world like UK or Australia, they were not even heard of here in Austria. So it was very difficult to find things. There was nothing online where I could find information for. So it was really a lot of struggle, a lot of research that went into finding things, sourcing things, and then I eventually did find pigments in France and I ordered them. Then I did a lot of trial and errors. So there was a lot of experimentation involved, where after which I was able to formulate and make good quality paints. This inspired me to start my own Etsy store where I sold my pigments for a short while, because I could not really see myself making paint pans, sitting for hours and doing this laborious job which brings nothing basically, especially if you don't have a reach and you don't have any marketing skills. To sell your products and to make a living out of it was really a futile attempt. I did learn how to make paints, how to improvise, how to formulate. So basically this was all required for me to learn and master the technique. And since my hand was, it was injured, it still is not so fully how it was before. So I didn't want to keep on making paints. It's quite strenuous for my hand. And so I decided that I would rather teach people, which is what I used to do when I was doing my PhD studies and also as a postdoc, where I mentored undergrad students doing the research. So this is something I really enjoyed. So that's when I found that I could also produce content and share it on YouTube. I was very hesitant in the beginning because I didn't know how to film, I didn't know how to do editing or dubbing and etc. This was something totally new. Again, I was pushed out of my comfort zone, and but I really want to thank Primal Video, the only channel that I followed and where I learned everything from filming, editing, etc. and also about the gadgets. But Justin is the person who carries out the tutorials, and I also learned that you don't really need fancy gadgets to make videos. So I started basically with a very simple iPhone. Also the quality was not so great, but this is the only thing I could afford. But I was still able to produce. I learned a lot during this process. I learned so many things about this entire digital world. This is how I began my YouTube journey. And then came another phase where my husband said, why don't you do a Kickstarter campaign? It's a great platform for creators. So I started a Kickstarter campaign, but it didn't succeed. We fell short of a few $100 to achieve the funding goal. And so again, I learned a lot during the process. I learned how to write creatively and how to produce content for marketing purposes. This is all, everything, all of these things were failures, but I was learning also in this process. So there was more of learning as well involved. And so since Kickstarter campaign failed, we did a little bit more research how I could share my educational content, and that's when I discovered Teachable. And so Teachable, I love this platform, and I would love to produce more content for Teachable, but unfortunately I can't really afford the professional version, the subscription for the professional version. So I'm still on a very basic one because Teachable recently changed their policies, so I had to switch back. It's too expensive, especially if you're not earning so much from your online courses. You always have to look at every aspect of it because there is cost involved in many things. Hosting, then you have the music content, etc. If you are a YouTuber, you know how much goes into it for producing just a short video. But anyway, so I also experimented a bit with Skillshare. I mean, Skillshare is good, but it's too saturated and it doesn't work for a creative like me whose sole income is based on sharing educational content. It's not a side hustle for me. Skillshare failed for me. So yes, I have produced a few courses all related to natural pigments on my Teachable platform, and I recently concluded my last course on Teachable, which was on how to grow a natural dye garden, and I'm very happy with the success of this course. So yeah, so this is how I have how my journey has been many roadblocks, and clearing those roadblocks, overcoming the challenges. And I'm still struggling, I'm still at that phase, but I don't want to give up on what I'm doing because I love doing this. I enjoy creating educational content. I love sharing it with the people. So finally, I like to thank you for being part of this journey, and I'm really looking forward to the exciting adventures that await us in the next year. On that note, I wish you all a beautiful holiday season that's filled with joy, warmth, and the company of your loved one. With love and gratitude, Jyotsna signing off. See you in 2024.